You clicked the video, I made the video, let's get right into it. Silksong has been out for just over 5 months, and I think it's safe to say we're a little starved for content. So today let's talk about a few things I think Team Cherry should at least consider adding if they want to keep the life cycle of this game of the year going. Now, as the resident tool guy, I'd be committing a crime if we didn't at least talk about expanding and improving the current tool roster, but not in the way that people usually think. Just adding more tools is a band-aid solution. All it does is create a new solved meta, and 6 weeks later we're right back where we started. Instead, if you deepen the systems around tools and reward build commitment, build diversity will absolutely skyrocket. And I've devised the cleanest way to do it: set bonuses. Set bonuses are everywhere in RPGs and MMOs. You equip multiple pieces from the same group, you get stacking benefits, and eventually you unlock a capstone effect. The whole philosophy is greater than the sum of its parts. One piece alone doesn't make you as powerful as Mossbag would be if he had a consistent upload schedule. Still, if you commit to 2 or 3 thematically linked pieces, you'd gain some insane powers. Let me give you some examples. Wreath of Purity plus Shaman's Crest creates a synergy where the wreath becomes permanent and cannot break. That's not game warping, but it is build defining. Now layer in something like the Barbed Bracelet, and maybe that same set bonus removes the double damage downside as well. Now, we're not just buffing a weak tool, we've created a reason to run it, and that's the whole goal here. Not make the strongest build stronger, but making more builds valid. And you can even go more thematic with it. Take something like the Architect set. Group tools tied to the Architect tech and lore. If you equip multiple pieces, tool durations increase, shard refills cost cheaper, and tool deploy speed improves. It'll feel like you've actually inherited mastery over their tech instead of just equipping random gadgets. And yeah, I'm being very gentle with how I introduce set bonuses here because sure, it'd be really easy to say, yeah, Flint Slate plus Wisfire Lantern turns you into a Dark Souls 3 boss and Gwyn's theme plays every time you walk into a room. The goal isn't to warp Silksong into something else. The goal is to bundle strong tools with weaker ones and reward commitment. If you sacrifice raw efficiency to complete a set, you gain effects that offset weaknesses, open new playstyles, and make build crafting way more interesting long term. Godhome. This is a relatively simple concept, but for the majority of the player base, it's an absolute nightmare, and I think it really needs to be addressed even before a Pantheon-type DLC gets added officially, and that's the option to refight bosses. Now, as a member of the PC Master Race community, I don't really suffer from this problem. Mods already solve basically every issue I could have with the game. I mean, the footage you see on screen in almost every YouTube video is using mods to teleport around for convenience. Sorry to pull the veil back, but if you thought every time a YouTuber fought a boss for a video, they started a brand new playthrough, I want to welcome you to the 21st century, Unk. But speaking for console players who make up a huge part of the player base, they deserve the thrill of fighting Chef Lugoli on repeat and watching her throw it back in the most diabolical way possible. Yes, I said she. Look it up. You won't be disappointed. Or obviously revisiting fights like Carmelita, watching her do her best Beyblade impression, and pummeling you with her queenly majesty. I'm getting off topic. We need an internal, built-in way to refight bosses on our own terms. Mods already prove this works, and they're extremely stable. We don't even need upgraded versions like Absolute Radiance yet. Just the baseline vanilla boss roster would already be massive for practice, content creation, and long-term replayability. Now, I can see a long-term concern here. If players have unlimited access to boss practice, overall skill level across the player base is going to go up. And designing future content, assuming everyone is cracked out of their mind, is risky for players who want a cozy experience and just want to see the story of Hornet and Farloom unravel. I completely get that, but there's a pretty clean solution to that entire problem, and Hornet herself technically introduces it in the original game. Here, I'll show you. I'm obviously being facetious. Not all content needs to be tuned for lower skilled players, and realistically, the players who invest the most time into mastering the systems are usually the ones who stick around longest and keep the community alive between content drops. Implementing something like a Godhome style DLC and designing future hard content under the assumption that players have mastered the base bosses could create a really healthy feedback loop. It gives players the tools to improve, and it gives Team Cherry the freedom to create some absolutely mind-numbing, borderline illegal boss fights later, knowing the community has the training ground to handle them. And let's be honest, if you give this community a boss refight mode, we are absolutely gonna ruin these bosses in ways Team Cherry never intended. No hit runs, blindfolded runs, and of course, I only attack when my mom throws her shoes at me runs. It will get wild. So if we're gonna spend unhealthy amounts of time mastering this combat system, it would be really cool if the game actually rewarded that long-term investment, which is where our next idea comes in: Crest Mastery. Crest Mastery would be the idea that the more time, kills, and overall playtime you have with a specific crest, the stronger it grows alongside you. You gain new effects, improve existing ones, and it gives players a real reason to commit to one crest for extended periods of time instead of constantly swapping to whatever is mathematically best. I recently played with the Silksong mod that added RPG elements to the base game, and it was some of the most fun I've had with the game, because innately you were rewarded for two sorts of boring things in repeat playthroughs: wishes and killing normal enemies. In my first playthrough of the game, I of course ventured into every corner of Farloom, which I immediately regretted, and tried to complete every quest possible, but in repeat playthroughs, that's kind of boring and tedious to do. But with the Silksong mod, I was rewarded with XP for those same wishes, which turned into levels and eventually into massive amounts of power. The same concept applied for killing enemies on the way to other more important objectives. Enemies just became obstacles in repeat playthroughs, whereas with the Silksong mod, I was excited for gauntlets because I knew I'd be getting a fat XP drop and more levels. Mastering your crest could be done in a number of ways, either through killing mobs and bosses, completing wishes, and additionally just by how long you've had the crest equipped in active gameplay. Let's stop the cheese before it starts. By earning mastery over a crest, which should take a long while, the innate bonuses should increase. Let's use the Beast or Hunter's Crest as examples. The Beast Crest bind is the entire crest, giving you attack speed, range, lifesteal, damage, and piercing abilities for Hornet's Needle. And as you grow in mastery, the crest would evolve and become a bit stronger, a bit faster, or the bind would take less time to complete. The same could be done for the Hunter's Crest, which when evolved has the effect where if you land consecutive attacks, your needle damage will increase multiplicatively. The greater your mastery, the lower the number of hits will be needed to activate these thresholds. That already rewards players for their commitment to a certain crest and gives Team Cherry a reason to buff certain aspects of weaker crests. But here's the real kicker. When you fully master a crest, you gain an innate bonus specific to that crest mastery system that will now transfer to every other crest, like say the Shaman's Crest Mastery bonus will now award you with a small portion of the increased spell damage across all other crests. Sorry Architect Crest mains. This type of system can be expanded incredibly deeply and not only rewards players for their devotion to individual crests, but also sees a purpose to diversifying your arsenal as the game goes on, so that by the time you fight Lost Lace, Hornet no longer feels even remotely similar to how she did at the beginning of her journey, so long as you actually put in the time and effort. A smaller benefit to this system is that it would just make grinding for shards and rosaries infinitely less boring. Instead of just farming the Grand Reeds for 5 hours for rosaries, you are now grinding rosaries and crest mastery, which I think is infinitely more interesting than just throwing 5 hours of my finite existence into Jubliana's pockets. Okay, I know we said we wouldn't just be adding new tools, but stick with me here because this also bleeds directly into my next and final section in a really big way. Tools are supposed to be the main power progression system in Silksong, but they also connect us to the world in really meaningful ways. The Plasmium File is the perfect example. It's not just strong mechanically, it foreshadows the insanity that happens in Act 3 with Xylitol and everything surrounding that storyline. And I think right there is the perfect intersection of where future tools should live. Not all inventions in the world end up being functionally useful or game-breaking. Sometimes people just create stuff because they were completely bonkers. I mean, look at my entire YouTube career before Silksong bailed me out. And I think Silksong's world needs more tools like these, and I have some insane ideas. One, we need a yellow tool that changes the pogo in a significant way, either by stealing the pogo from another moveset or changing the individual physics to make it different and possibly more useful with a higher skill ceiling. A tool that changes Hornet's weight and allows her to chain more pogos more frequently or infrequently could be really cool and offers unique aerial styles of combat, which then could be supplemented by a tool that increases pogo damage the longer you stayed airborne, acting like when Mario consecutively jumps on enemies and starts gaining 1-ups. Another would be a tool that modifies the spells we have in crazy ways. My idea for the cross stitch would be to, instead of attacking after a successful parry like Phantom does, Hornet instead gains a temporary buff to her attack speed and damage to make up for the sacrifice of what the parry damage would have been. The exchange for this buff could be to lower the amount of frames one has to land a successful parry, but the wackiest one I devised was a rhythm-based tool. Since this game's music is so ingrained in the design philosophy, why not reward players with a tool that stores a ramping damage increase the more times you land an attack on beat? This was inspired by the guy who fought the Cogwork dancers in sync with their song and would absolutely turn every battle into a choreographed dance instead of running away for dear life while the Cogflies and Plasmium overdose carry you through Act 3. The last place I think the DLC has huge potential is new crests, and honestly, this is where I think Team Cherry would go the most wild without breaking the game. Tools make you stronger, but crests change how you actually play Hornet. They change your moveset, your decision making, tool slots, and literally Hornet's identity. When you swap crests, it almost feels like you're playing a different character using the same base kit. And that's something Silksong does better than almost any game in the space. One direction that feels almost inevitable is some void adjacent crest. The end of Act 3 sees Hornet diving into the abyss and ultimately succumbing to it after the Everbloom's petals exhaust their pale light. So at this point, Hornet has been touched by the Void and in some ways could have absorbed the unstable powers into her shell and darkened a Crest. The opposite notion could also be true, where the Everbloom left a lasting embrace on Hornet and has permanently affected her, giving her control of this pale light that it emits. Obviously, this is just the plot of Jak 3. Sorry for the spoilers. Seeing void-laced or pale-inspired Crest could be an amazing homage to the original game, while also evolving the narrative of these two factions into one being. Then maybe she'll finally step out of the Knight's humongous shadow as the better protagonist. I could really see the Void tendrils being the charged attack, and a mechanic that when toggled consumes Silk over time to buff Hornet in unique and Void-inspired ways. On the flip side, the Everbloom related Crest easily could be the passive healing Crest, changing her binding into something that instead of healing her for 3 masks at once, heals her for 4 or 5 but over a set period of time, and allowing more passive styles of play. The Vesta Crest could also receive some additions given that Eva has fused her power into Hornet's shell, which obviously gave us the Silksong ability to regenerate Silk while sitting at a bench, but having interchangeable slots could be a great evolution to this already great system. Honestly, I have a ton more ideas that Team Cherry could implement into their amazing game, and I'm sure all of you have amazing ideas that I look forward to reading in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, thank you for sticking through it, and if you can give it a like and maybe subscribe for regular Silksong content, I'd appreciate it. Peace.